Hi, I'm David Sardá, and I'm class of 2025, and this is our Nuestra Historia, Nuestra Voz project.
Hi, I'm Megan, and I'm also class of 2025.
Hi, I'm Jamie Gonzalez, and I'm also class of 2025.
Okay, so for our project, we were tasked with digitizing the Latinx at Duke exhibition currently on display in Perkins Library. Our goals were to encapsulate the physical exhibit on an online platform, create an interactive experience for the user, accurately represent the Latinx experience at Duke throughout history, and allow for the continued exploration of Latinx students on campus.
So basically, how we approach this, it's a very, very large exhibit. It has about 8 to 9 cases total. And what we kind of did with this is that we wanted to see how this was basically made from a bunch of digital documents and just a bunch of kind of like archived material. And we kind of wanted to explore in what ways we could expand this and what ways we wanted to keep it and how we could maybe adjust the exhibit to what we needed. So in doing this, we kind of wanted to kind of like see what possible platforms we could use to store all this information, and we kind of looked at other example platforms and like other websites that are basically digitalized archives or kind of exhibits. So we looked at museum exhibits, other academic exhibits, and we kind of just tried to narrow down what we wanted to do, kind of to determine our general approach. And then based on this, we kind of got a bunch of different ideas, different approaches that we really liked, and then we kind of tried to balance what we wanted to do with our abilities, kind of the budget that we had, and then obviously the 6-week time constraint. And then basically from this, we reviewed all the archival material that we had, and then we determined, what was very integral to the general like meaning and the outcome that we wanted for this exhibit, so that we could make this as successful as possible.
So to create the website, we basically just designed it to include all the elements from the physical exhibit. Basically, everything is digitized from the gallery to the different cases, the zine, the timeline. All of it is digitized into the website. We kept the roots and leaves motif that's seen throughout the physical exhibit and the very vibrant colors that they used. That's basically our main theme throughout the entirety of the website. We wanted to really bring that to life and showcase that so that those who don't visit the exhibit physically can still get the same experience. The bilingualism is there. The website is both in English and Spanish, just as in the physical exhibit, everything is translated. And we also just really want to thank Lucas, Professor Munné, and Professor Márquez for their guidance and support. And the library staff, Ms. McDonald and Ms. Brown, they really helped us bring this exhibit to life, even through the website.
So now we're going to just showcase the website that we actually made the final product, and kind of walk through our thoughts, how we approached everything, and then how we just created the final product. Let's see. Okay.
Okay, so this is the home page. It's the landing page of the website, and the user is greeted with a slideshow of pictures that kind of encapsulate the lively nature of the physical exhibit. It also has a button directly to the gallery underneath, and if you scroll down, you see a informational video with the some statistics that were on display at the exhibit. Scrolling down further, you see an introduction both in English and in Spanish, with a button to include the acknowledgements to everyone who worked on this project. And that is also in English and Spanish. And then once you go to the gallery, these are all of the cases with pictures of the actual cases in the exhibit. They're also in English and Spanish, and when you click on each case, for example, if you click on case 2, you're given an informational blurb giving context for the case. For this one, it's about Jim Crow, both in English and Spanish, and then when you scroll down, you can see an interactive picture of the case and a description of the actual case itself. And so this one, you can just click on the different documents. It gives a scanned version of the document with the citations and all of the information about them. And then another example of a case that we made was case 4. They're all pretty similar. They all have the interactive element and an English and Spanish version. So clicking on the different documents, if you cannot read them, you can just click on the pluses. And then also for the picture itself, you can enlarge that if you need a better look.
Then one of the larger parts of the exhibit was an entire timeline that was made from basically the first Latinx students to be admitted on campus, and then obviously up until the exhibit was made. So there's this entire timeline that was made, and as I said, it starts with pre-1945, and it goes all the way. You can truly it's very, very interactive, and it goes through the entirety of the history, what was happening in the United States in a more like general context, what was happening in Latin America, and it just truly does encapsulate the entire, let's say, journey that Latinx students and individuals on campus took to get to this point that we could truly have like a complete website and obviously an exhibit. Then we also included a section with oral histories. These were interviews conducted by students, basically interviewing staff, professors, students, alumni, all these other people that truly made an impact as Latinx students on campus. And you can watch these interviews individually. You click here and it sends you to a YouTube video, and it goes through each one. They're very, very informational videos. They're very good. And then we also have oral histories here, and they're basically just small quotes that were taken that we thought that were very important from some of the people interviewed. And it just provides kind of an insight into what it means to be Latinx on Duke, and obviously what is a priority for students and staff on campus.
So if you visit the exhibit, you'll notice that there's a big map on it. So we basically adapted that map and we used the same one, but we made it interactive. And we did it in a way that it displays the nationalities of the Duke students. The data that you see is as of fall of 2020, but the purpose is to continue updating the map over time. So if you hover over the countries, you can see how many Duke students are from there. And then if you go to the zine, there's a zine located in the exhibit. So we basically just digitized that, and the zine has a scrolling feature kind of to mimic, the experience of reading through a zine. And you can scroll through that. There's an English and a Spanish version, since the zine is in both. And then you can view it as a PDF if you wish to view it larger. You can just click on the button and it takes you to the PDF version. And if you scroll to the bottom of the page, you can see the thesis that Elizabeth presented about the history of Latinx students. And if you're interested in reading that, you can click the button at the bottom and it takes you to a PDF version of her thesis.
So this is basically the entire website. We also included this footer that's very, very important, and it was something that was very meaningful to us. This kind of quote that they tried to bury us, that they didn't know that we were seeds, and it truly just encapsulates the entire idea behind the exhibit that although Latinx students were often erased or not put at the forefront of what was happening on campus, students prevailed and were able to actually make their impact and their voices heard on campus. So we thank you very much for obviously viewing this exhibit and website with us, and thank you very much.